Welcome back to our UMO Helsinki Jazz Orchestra trombone section instructional videos. We're going to change the style of music that we're playing because as music for big band developed in the 1950s and 60s, there were some new challenges that were presented to the trombone section or the low brass section. Gil Evans was one of the composers, arrangers who started to change the sound of big band writing in the 1950s. And we now have an excerpt from Miles Ahead, and this is an album that Gil Evans arranged and composed for orchestra with the great Miles Davis, recorded in 1957. And this is sort of showing a little other different aspect of big band playing, something that might be, well, it's definitely more modern than what we were playing and working with before. So please enjoy Gil Evans' Miles Ahead. Thank you very much. And, this is also when we were talking about intonation, as we were in the last video, talking about open triads and open intervals. So very often, more modern big band writing has more of these exposed, sort of dangerous spots for intonation. And once again, we got to hear how the section here did a great job with tuning the major and minor triads, some of the open intervals. Another one of the things that Gil Evans was known for, and this is also one of the expectations of modern big band playing, is that usually somebody from the trombone section is also expected to play tuba. Very often it's the bass trombone player, but in this case we needed the bass trombone because Gil Evans wrote a bass trombone part. So our second trombone player, Mikko Mustonen, played the tuba, and it's also something that I would maybe recommend all trombone players to think about a little bit, doubling maybe on tuba or euphonium or tenor horn, something like that. If you're used to playing everything with the slide, it's also sort of nice to learn fingerings, to learn how the valved instruments work, and of course thinking about the expanded sound options that you have. I think it's wonderful in an orchestra and in a trombone section if somebody can double on tuba or euphoniums. And I guess maybe this is a question. Mikko, how did you come to play tuba? Or did you start on tuba and switch to trombone, start on trombone? I mean, how did you start doing that?
A very special situation. I fell with my bicycle and I broke my lips, so I couldn't play trombone. I started play.
So it was
tuba.
So you had an accident. You had to play. You were forced to play tuba.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. And then at some point in time, you came back to playing trombone.
But yes.
Wow. Oh, wow. Was it okay? I guess it's. But it was a long time ago, right?
Yes.
And you're fine. But actually, that's really great because once again, you play both instruments wonderfully. So I guess that's the good thing that came out of that accident, right? Because maybe you would have never started to play the tuba. And have you always played an E-flat tuba, or have you played different types of tuba?
Yes, I have a C tuba also. I have tried it here, but it's a little bit kömpelö.
Gymbele.
Clumsy.
Gymbele. Oh, thank you. And I learned a new Finnish word today. Thank you. Gymbele. For clumsy.
It's a bit big and slow.
Oh, big and slow. Well, a bit like me then, So, but anyway, I can understand that. But the thing is also for the trombone section, the E-flat tuba seems to be a good match. So I think this is also something, in my years of playing tuba, I always preferred a B-flat tuba, just for me because it was simple to translate the slide positions into the fingerings for me. But once again, everybody has some different preferences. Juho, you also play a bit of tuba, right? And how did you, what,
Yeah.
did you start on the trombone or the tuba, or what
No,
was
no, no.
your,
Yeah, I started with the trombone, and I was in my 30s when I went to play in a musical in Helsinki City Theater, and there was a, for my surprise, there was a tuba part, and that period of in that time I couldn't. There was no time anymore to back out from the project, so I had to. So I was like told that I have to practice for the summer before the show starts in the autumn. But in fact, I play exactly the same horn as Mikko.
okay, also
Yeah,
an E flat?
E flat
Okay.
tuba. I find it quite easy. It's a small horn. It's really easy to move from bass trombone, and well, the fingerings they took some time, but for that musical I was playing the tuba, and I just wrote the fingerings on top of the.
Maybe you're not supposed to tell people the reality, but
There are
but
many ways to approach
of
tuba
course.
playing, and that's it's not that difficult.
Well, that's the thing, and I mean, and the thing is I also, I mean, Mikko, I get the feeling you enjoy playing tuba as well. But do you enjoy playing the tuba as well?
Well, enjoy. I wouldn't use that word. I played if I played if it's necessary, but I find it quite. It's not when you get into it and you do it and you get the routine for it. It's quite fun and easy. But yeah, but I don't know. I do it if it's necessary.
Okay, that's fine. No, I mean, I've always enjoyed playing the tuba. But anyway, but that's, I guess, my own thing. Pekka, have you ever played like euphonium or any doubling instruments like that?
Well, I have played tuba in UMO big band.
Also, okay.
At least 10 years. I started about the same way than Juho. So there was this new musical coming in the fall, and in spring they called me from the theater that sorry, you can't make it because you don't play tuba. I said them that there's all summer to practice, and I had more small child then, so I was babysitting and playing tuba. Whole
And
summer.
and how old is your child now?
30 actually.
And do they have to go to a psychiatrist because
Sure.
of that?
No.
No, they don't. Okay, good. It was
Maybe-
actually probably very good for them. Very
She-
resonant low sounds. That probably helped them sleep.
Yeah, but maybe that's the reason she likes horses and animals very much. I don't know.
That could be. Okay, and then here's a question: do you still play tuba sometimes, or is it?
No, I sold it, but never know. Maybe someday.
Could come back. Okay, great. And Kasper, do you play euphonium or tuba, or what's your doubling situation?
I don't play the tuba, but I've doubled on euphonium, and I actually started out with valve trombone, which is something that you could consider if you were playing Ellington's music, because of course Juan Tisol played valve trombone in Ellington's band. So depending on, if you really want to take it to the utmost level of authenticity, you can play some of those parts with the like Caravan or Chelsea Bridge with the valve trombone. But that maybe lies ahead of me. I've been practicing the large bore tenor recently, so that's a step in the right direction.
Well, but this is, I think, maybe where this can also lead. So talking about doubling on valved instruments, but also doubling on other instruments in the trombone family. So we've noticed Juho has already been doubling on bass trombone and large bore tenor, depending on the piece. And as we've seen here, Mikko doubling on tuba. But also, as we see, Pekka has also a large bore tenor trombone with an F attachment. And developments in the last 40 years in big band playing have moved in some circles. Not every big band, but if you follow, for example, the Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra, for very many years, that band had, in the trombone section, it was 2 tenor trombones and 2 bass trombones. Or 2 tenors, 2 small tenors, a large bore tenor and a bass. Or Bob Brookmeyer's New Art Orchestra was also a band with 2 bass trombones. Because a lot of times, in a lot of modern writers, are writing increasingly low things for the third trombone. And then, of course, if you combine it with tuba, or I've even heard some big bands with contrabass trombone on the fourth, it sort of makes sense to have the flexibility to switch and change equipment to meet the requirements of this more modern music. And this is coming back to this equipment question, and this is also one of the discussions we've been having over the last 6 months, is that I also prefer, for certain things, to have the section play large bore instruments. So, and this is one of the things we're going to do now. This next excerpt, which of course Kasper is going to talk a little bit more about, is a composition from Bob Brookmeyer. It's a ballad with some wonderful chorale writing, but it's also written for sort of bass trombone and a large bore on the third, and it's a certain sound. And so, yeah, Kasper, if you'd like to elaborate on that, please.
Right. So this is we'll play the very ending of First Love Song, and this is slightly more leaning towards classical orchestral music. We're looking for a more round tone, no vibrato. So with earlier excerpts, we've used slide vibrato and we've used some lip vibrato on the Ellington, but with this it's just a very straight sound, vocal quality, and we're in the role that trombone players very often are in, which is providing the harmony, providing some mass and providing some harmony, and we're playing just quarter notes really, mostly actually, and a few chords at the end. And what I'd like you to listen out for is or just notice is, as we all are playing the same rhythms, we have to decide on the breathing, and we have how should I say this in English? I'm looking for a word, but it's not coming to me. Anyway, we have to stagger breathing. That's the correct term that I'm looking for. So in order to not create a huge gap in the music, we're trying to hide the breath. So we breathe at different intervals. Very often, when you're playing in a big band, you'll decide on where you want to breathe together because it makes sense. But in this sort of context, you don't want to breathe together. You want to keep these very long phrases, keep them going, and you want to try and hide the breath. And so I'll be listening to Pekka, for example, and listening to where he breathes, and I'll just breathe after him. So that's an important part. Breaths are an integral part of playing orchestral music. It really is very important where you breathe.
Exactly, and to decide as a section how you're going to breathe. I mean, very good point. Either deciding as the section we are all going to breathe together, or to stagger breathe. Of course, you could even take that to the next level and actually decide, have a discussion and decide who is going to breathe exactly where and when. But of course, another thing, coming back to our theme of active listening, of course, just basically listening to each other, being aware of what the others are doing and adjusting accordingly.
Right. One last point I'll make is, of course, the lower you go, the more air you need. So the bass trombone, for example, has complete right to breathe whenever he needs to, and of course that applies to everybody. It's better to breathe than to run out of air. Better to breathe, play with the full sound, than to wither away slowly. So Juho will be breathing where the rest of us won't towards the end with these long chords. So that's something to just be aware of, that you have the right to breathe. So.
Thank you. And this is the UMO Helsinki Jazz Orchestra trombone section with Bob Brookmeyer's First Love Song.